Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you happen to find yourself in the world at the moment, and welcome to QS in Conversation Live. I'm Anton John Crace, and I'm the editor and program designer at QS Cochraly Simmons. Now, welcome to the very first QS in Conversation for the year. I hope you are having a great 2021 and Year of the Ox so far. In this episode, we'll be looking at proactive learning. In fact, the reason we're looking at proactive learning is in the lead up to the Maple Conference, which is later this month from the 23rd to the 25th of March. That is looking at the future today, sustainable growth towards 2030. But with me this evening, we have Dr. Ezra Al-Dahayan, the Executive Director for at the Center for Quality Assurance and Accreditation at Alia University, Uzra Al-Haj, the Quality Expert at University St. Joseph, Professor Chris Rudd, Deputy Vice Chancellor and Head of Campus Singapore of James Cook University, and Carla Saba, the Deputy General Manager at Berry Tech. Now, as I said, we're looking at proactive learning, and basically that entails the way the future needs are changing and shifting and how education can address that. To start us off, I want to ask the question, what were the major lessons around proactive learning that your organization learned throughout 2020? To start us off, I think I will pass it straight on to Dr. Ezra. For you, what were the major lessons learned about proactive learning last year?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me today. I must start with the major changes from our Alia University experience. Safety first, and the academic journey must go on. So what we have done is we had a lot of major lessons that we took care of. One of them is setting quality assurance standards to maintain our quality standards in terms of teaching and learning, and also the assessments. One also of the major lessons that we are very proud of is conducting industry-based virtual site visits that really allows our students to have some sort of the experience, even though if it's virtual. However, we did not really, allow our students to be neglected of facing this experience. So we really maintained our relationship with the industry by having industrial placements that they were conducted virtually, and also conducting various activities to maintain our student well-being and also to remain emotionally attached with the teaching and learning experience. And so we had a couple of virtual experience, including academic and non-academic activities that we are very happy with. These are our major lessons. And in addition to that is to ensure that our faculty is continuously developed and also made aware with the dynamic changes and the dynamic rules and regulation that we had to set to maintain our academic standards. In short, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Ezra. And I can see some people in the audience have already seen that we have a Q&A. I should have mentioned the audience is as much a part of this as we are. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please do feel free to use that Q&A button to ask a question. I'll go to that too when we can. For you, Chris, what were the major lessons in proactive learning that you took away from 2020?
Yeah, you know, Anton, there's the old adage, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And I think having, you know, this kind of unique vantage point in Singapore enabled us maybe to see this thing coming a little bit earlier than perhaps some other territories. And so I think the best thing that we did was that we acted decisively and we acted early. You know, we moved everything online, not just our programs, but also our student-facing admin. And that really enabled us to come through this thing, you know, putting our students first and enabling them to continue their programs right through to graduation, you know, whether they were in Singapore or whether they were stuck, as many of them were, in their home countries. And I think as a result of that, you know, we served our community and we actually came through, I think, with a fresh sense of confidence and capability that I wouldn't have recognized before COVID-19.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. I think that's an interesting point that you bring up because obviously, I mean, I am based in Singapore as well. And a lot of the Asian-based countries were quite prepared to a degree with COVID-19, having gone through bird flu and other sorts of pandemics as well. So it'll be an interesting point of discussion down in the future as well. Ursula, what are the sorts of lessons that you took away from 2020 in regards to proactive learning?
Well, greetings everyone, and thank you very much, Anton, for having us. I would like to point to three of many lessons of St. Joseph University of Beirut from 2020. The first one, I would like to mention the importance of reinforcing proactive learning. So when we moved from physical to online teaching, students became more independent in their learning. It was harder for us to control them in the classroom, who is there, who's not there. They had the freedom to watch the class whenever they want, to rewatch it, to speed it up, to skip sometimes. Only their interest in the course and their proactivity could guarantee the real engagement. So we had to put a lot of emphasis and effort in looking for ways to engage students online. The second lesson I would like to mention is the importance of human touch and empathy. Like Isra mentioned about the well-being and virtual experiences for students. Our students also, when they moved from physical to digital world, they were in the middle of various crises in Lebanon. So there was financial crisis and also the health crisis. So they required various types of care and support. Obviously, like everyone needed technical support to adapt to a new space, but they also required psychological and emotional support. So we needed to focus a lot on creativity, divergent thinking, design mindset, also to help them navigate all this ambiguity they were facing. And the third was the contextual learning that I also share with Isra, with the industrial site visits. In the physical space, students had access to labs, tools, field visits, human interaction, so many things. But once in the digital space, we needed to find a way to recreate the context to make their study hands-on and practical. So we had to move into virtual international exchange, virtual internship, and online classrooms. So we had to bring companies into the classroom. So I guess these were three of the major lessons in proactive learning we had.
Thank you very much for that, Ursula. And as you point out, both you and Carla work very closely together. And in fact, we'll be speaking at Maple later this month. Carla, what for you were the big takeaways and lessons learned from 2020?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Anton, for having me in this discussion today. In fact, I'm speaking today on behalf of Begitech. Begitech offers an ecosystem for entrepreneurs to create and develop their own startups and SMEs through research, incubation, business support, networking, mentoring, funding, access to markets, company hosting, and acceleration. Some of you may be wondering, why am I among the panelists in today's discussion since Begitech is not a university? Well, Begitech was founded back in 2002 as an initiative of the St. Joseph University of Beirut. And we are recently collaborating with the Faculty of Engineering to deliver the design thinking and innovation course in order to foster a proactive learning culture. And that's why I will be complimenting Ursula in this discussion today. And regarding the lessons we have taken out of this pandemic, I would want to highlight on the lessons acquired on two levels. First one being the ecosystem and community of entrepreneurs level, and the second level is the design thinking and innovation course level. On the Begitech ecosystem level, we have moved all of our trainings, workshops, and meetings online to continue running our programs. And known for our vigilance and adaptability, Lebanese entrepreneurs and startups who are participants in our programs were able to easily cope with this digital transformation. When it came to sites where the companies are being hosted, it was a little different. We currently host more than 200 companies in our 3 innovation parks across different regions of Lebanon, 2 of them being inside of the St. Joseph University of Beirut campuses. Well, Our strength lies in being part of a community, and we, along with our tenants, have suddenly found ourselves powerless when we couldn't access the sites on a regular basis. As a community, we used to catch up in some workshops in the meeting rooms, at the cafeteria, in the lobby, lounge, etc. But then suddenly we were deprived of all of this because of the pandemic and the total lockdown of the country. What we have learned ourselves, as well as from our community members, that even if you can work from home and actually run your business from home, not accessing the Veritech sites is not about missing your office space or workstation or desk, but rather missing this strong bond and interaction of the community. As a Veritech community, maybe the term social distancing was awkward to us, as we have been always eager for social connecting. But as Isra and Chris mentioned before, safety comes first, so we had to just stop accessing the sites. On the course level, we initially participated as Veritech in this course when we saw a lack of soft skills needed on the market. I mean, the necessary skills needed on the job. Those were, in fact, the needs addressed by our entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs. So we aimed to take on this mission of matchmaking between our community's entrepreneurs and the wannabe entrepreneurs who are the university students. I would want to end up here on the importance of proactive learning, as raised earlier by my colleague Ursula, as the need of our companies for proactive students was so obvious. They don't really need students who are just there for the grade. They won't hire any one of them later simply because they are A students. The result was that we had students who became ambassadors for this course and students who went even on an internship in their third year of engineering school. Also during this pandemic, we learned that patience and support were the virtues to master this crisis. So we created a full support system from professors to ambassadors to company owners. And some of them happened to be St. Joseph University graduates and mainly engineers who really wanted to support those students since they didn't have the chance to attend such a course back in time during their undergrad years. And though we couldn't have our students access the site this year when working with the companies, but we had to compensate to this by letting them access our calendars through Calendly so they can arrange for and book meetings with us at their convenience. And the most touching experience we have lived in this pandemic, in addition to the support and the human touch, is really that we were able to help and promote lifelong learning. We are very delighted to prepare and develop students and recruit future entrepreneurs as we are doing right now. In fact, the backward integration strategy just worked pretty well in the sense that we don't have to wait for any working entrepreneurs as Veritech, but we should rather go and hunt them out of these classrooms, even if these classrooms are now online.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Carla. Now, I shared the questions that I was planning on asking with the panelists beforehand, and they've actually answered predominantly what I was going to ask, which was how have things adapted since last year. So I'll move on to the next question, which is a question I like to ask when I'm interviewing people. Given what we know now, how are priorities and strategy changed or are changing for the future? So a little bit of an extra introverted look back at what we know now and how things are changing. I'll start again with you, Dr. Ezra. How do you think that the priorities and strategy have changed or are changing towards the future?
Well, I think it's high time, especially for this part of the region, I'm talking about the Gulf area, it's high time for us to revamp our strategies. When we talk about revamping our strategy, we talk about having maybe a virtual higher education institute or offering our academic program blended that with a certain amount of a percentage of courses that they are offered virtually. And of course, things might not go back to normal from now until a specific time. However, once it's gone back to normal, hopefully, we are hoping that our strategies needs to be transformed in a sense that our teaching and learning method should be changed to fit with virtual learning. Our assessment needs to be focused to assess the students' skills in a way that it could be a continuous assessment to support them throughout their progression. Also, to provide the students the opportunity to select different means of delivery, so it enables some sort of lifelong learning and also prior learning to be adapted. So this is what we are hoping for, as well as we are hoping for excellence in teaching. And when we talk about excellence in teaching, we talk about different teaching and learning strategies that needs to be adapted, such as diversity, internationalization, relying on different diversified faculty that could teach from different parts of the region as part of our programs, so they can contribute in our academic program delivery from UK, US, and other parts of the region like Malaysia, and also teach in our academic program at the same time. So this is what we hope, and this is what we aim for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And some of the points that you brought up are actually addressed at the Reimagine conference. There is a summary of those points in the just released Subject Focused Summit Higher Education Report, which you can get from qs.com. I'll get that plug in very quickly. For you, Chris, given what you know now, how do you see that strategy has changed or is changing in the future?
Yeah, you know, Anton, it's been a fascinating year, and I think there's something about, you know, when we live in times of crisis or times of heightened security, then it makes us more innovative, right? And one thing that we have had an abundance of in the last 12 months is thinking time. And you know, I think we've used that to pretty good effect. And it's blindingly obvious that a business model that relies on stuffing a jumbo jet full of students and flying them halfway around the world is not a terribly sustainable prospect for all sorts of reasons, not just because of the pandemic, but because of the, you know, the impact of climate change and all of that. So I think it really has made us think about our business model, about the way our business scope is defined, but also our delivery mode, so that we can be more resilient, more innovative. And, you know, the points that were just being made about the opportunities that come from this new circumstance, bringing in talent from across the world into our virtual classrooms, and to the point actually that Chris Baldwin has made in the Q&A about needing to support your staff in different ways. You know, the fact that we're running a program in Singapore doesn't mean that our staff need to be based in Singapore, and you know, it may well suit their personal situation much greater to be based in Adelaide or Tehran or wherever their families are. And I think just being more responsive to the needs of our students and staff, I think, is another benefit that we've brought to the table.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. And that's a really good point that Chris Baldwin's brought up. He's the CEO of UMed Malaysia. I actually do want to ask that question a little bit later, so thank you for sending that through. Equally, there was a lot of discussion at Reimagine around staff wellbeing, and now sort of putting student wellbeing surveys and staff wellbeing surveys side by side, as this is an unusual period in which both the educators and the educated are being affected equally. I'll pass the question on to Ursula. Given what you know now, how do you see that strategy is changing or has changed already?
Well, due to this accelerated digital transformation, various strategies have changed and are still changing. We are still in process. So the first one I would like to talk about is the flexibility. So students have the flexibility now to choose what to learn, how to learn. And we're taking a position more into answering the question, being available. In a normal class, everyone is alike. It's so easy. We are sharing the same resources. Now we have to think about the equal access. How can we adapt the way we teach into these new needs? We have students with different access to technology, with different knowledge. The second one is about diversity and different type of journeys. So students will be studying longer and working earlier. They are going, since we are online, we have lots of students starting to work also online. It's going to be easier. We need to adapt to online team building and communication. So students have different opportunities whenever they are in a specific setting in a classroom to create friends and teams. Now, and as Chris was talking, that they are all over the world with different needs. So also we're going to have more diverse classrooms. We need to work on cross-cultural communication and be responsive to this international needs. Also, we can talk about collaboration and internationalization that we have increased. We are now integrating the companies in the classroom and the classroom in the companies. So the limits between classroom and internship and work is being broken. And this is where we bring in companies into the classroom and the lifelong learning concept together. So I guess these are few of the points that I can mention.
Thank you very much for that, Ursula. And finally, Carla, anything to add around how strategy is changing or has changed so far?
Yeah, actually, the strategy for proactive learning is definitely being set by the St. Joseph University that we are being part of. But I can share our experience as an incubator and accelerator. Well, at the very beginning of the pandemic, we couldn't go for innovation and think outside the box. We rather went to be very straightforward, very simple, because everyone's safety comes first. When it comes to the course context, Begitech is a technology pole, and it's a hub for tech companies. And working with the students and participating in this course was just one click away. And as Ursula said, we had to
it looks like, sorry, Carla, could you just
foster the bonds between the companies and the students, since they cannot access.
So could you just repeat that last part, Carla? Unfortunately, your internet broke up a little bit, so we missed the start of, we missed the conclusion, but not the beginning of that sentence.
Okay, so I will repeat about the course context, where Begitech is a technology pole, and it started as a hub for tech companies. So when we participated in this course along with students, companies were very at ease with it, because it was just like a click away. They are used to technology, etc. So this has also helped the students move on with this digital transformation. And we had to make this, bond stronger, and we had to support them more, because there is more effort when you are not physically present, when you have to do that online. Of course, we had to reinforce communication between them, because students, I believe, have understood that this project and this course, and to be a proactive learner, you need to be a team worker and to collaborate. It's not an individual outcome. And, they are, we had to help students build their skills online. So, I mean, the strategies of proactive learning should be adapted to also working on building soft skills of students and develop them to prepare them for the marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Carla. Now, we are about 25 minutes in, and I want to take the opportunity to answer some of the audience questions that have come through. There's one from Sheila Kayabyab. who's from the Philippines, and she asks, I believe it's mainly to your point actually, Dr. Ezra, at the very start, which is everything is new in this context. May we ask for some indicators you used to evaluate quality of teaching and learning? Thanks. I'll start with you, Dr. Ezra, but I will ask the other rest of the panel for their observations on this too.
Sure. One of the major parameters that we have used is, firstly, we have evaluated the student satisfaction on the overall experience of the teaching and learning. And the second one is we have triangulated these data with the overall grades that we have obtained. At the beginning, the first semester we faced, there was some sort of disturbance with the grading. However, we have seen the improvement within the grades and also with the ILOs attained within a certain course. So we have assessed the ILOs attainment rates as a quality parameter, as well as we have triangulated this rate with the student overall satisfaction rate and other indicators such as the faculty experience and so on. In addition to that, we had some sort of peer evaluations that a faculty member will attend the online class as an invitee, and they will assess the interaction between the faculty and the student within the online virtual experience. So these are the main pillars of our mean of assessing the quality of education at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ezra. I'll ask you a follow-up question to that because your points are actually very interesting. That the grading was disturbed initially, but there was improvement over time, and looking at some of the factors that were influencing that. Do you have any concepts of what the biggest improvement factors were? What was causing those improvements to grades?
Absolutely. One of the major factors was, firstly, students were not really used to online learning. They were used to student-centered learning and the interaction between the student themselves and the faculty, which is face-to-face. So they were not really relying on independent learning, which was really hard for them at the beginning to adapt. In addition to that, the anxiety that they had at the beginning about the examination and about the way that things are being delivered to them, and the other external factors like the internet connections and so on, that they were not really ready for that at the beginning. However, with the improvement within the curriculum and also with the type of methods and the assessment method that we have set, have really helped to improve and to get some sort of resilience in between by the students that really helped us to improve the overall grades and the overall experience of the students.
That's a really interesting point, especially around the factors on online learning. And I guess I would add to that, there was some other speakers previously who said that there's this assumption or a myth that students have grown up in a post-social media world, and therefore they are immediately au fait with digital technologies, and the skills required to use digital learning technologies are not inherently the same as any other digital technology, full stop. So that's very interesting to hear some of the factors that were influencing that and how those were resolved. For you, Chris, what do you see are the indicators for evaluating quality and teaching as well as learning?
Yeah, so I think no surprises here, Anton. You know, we poll our students internally, and we also we use the third parties like ISB. I think the reality is, you know, that if we were a typical institution and we were going to deliver this online project, you know, from planning to execution would have probably been about 2 years. But of course, the reality is that most institutions around the planet did it in about 2 months. And so it wasn't particularly surprising. We pulled our students back, I think, May last year, and we normally track at about 90% satisfaction. Our May figure dropped to about 70%. But the pleasing thing was by the end of the year, and by the time everybody had got used to the new normal, it was back up to about 90%. But in you know, just finally, I think that that's not the whole story. I think there's something around engagement, because, you know, I taught an online class for the first time mid-year, and, you know, you're faced with this classical situation where you've got a sea of blank screens, everybody on mute, everybody with video feed switched off, and trying to get that engagement and a level of interactivity. That's, to me, what we really should be measuring in terms of the effectiveness of this kind of blended mode of delivery.
Absolutely. You sort of hit on, you've hit on some points that were made by a speaker for our In Conversation podcast. The name escapes me at the moment, but basically she was talking about pedagogy, which is what was experienced by a lot of educators, in which they very, very quickly had to go online. There's a lot of panic and that has worn out a lot of people, which gets into Chris Baldwin's question, which we'll get to soon. The interesting thing, as she points out too, was that this period has brought a blending of the personal and the private life. So not only for workers, but students, they are stuck in their bedrooms, learning. Oftentimes they have other family members around, etc., that they have to deal with. But moving on, Ursula, do you have any points you'd like to make around the measures for evaluating quality of teaching and learning?
Yes, I would just, even though I agree with Isra and Chris, I'm just going to add a couple of points. The first one, we started working on 360 assessment. So the student would assess himself, and this would bring him to a reflection on how he is learning. We found this really important in this environment. The student peers assess each other. Every team of students that are working on a project, they do an assessment to each other. The professor assesses them, the company where they are working, and the ambassador. Usually we created something called course ambassador, which means students who already finished the course would support their peers in the process, and they would share their experience. So this is really hard. So ambassadors would also assess students. So every student would get various feedbacks and assessment, so we understand the real experience. The second thing is the frequency of assessment. So instead of having one major or two major assessments, we started making multiple short assessments. And this is, we can do this online. It's harder to do it in the classroom. So having these small assessments and feedback, we can understand how the student is advancing, and also we can work a lot on this with analytics. So we can have many assessments and information using analytics. And third, it is the detailed understanding of the perception. So the indicators are not as general as used to be. We want to understand if the satisfaction of the students or dissatisfaction comes from the technology, the content, the interaction. So there are more variables than we used to have before.
Perfect, thank you very much there. And finally, Carla, do you have any other comments to make around the evaluation? I suppose it wouldn't be around teaching and learning, but the evaluation of the success in students and graduates in acceleration programs?
Yeah, actually, I would add on what Ursula has just said, but I will talk mainly about the design of the course when we went to move online instead of the evaluation. Ursula mentioned the 360-degree evaluation. We as Veritech are part of it. We are assessing along with our companies the development of the students and the projects, of course, and we are supporting all the way. But given that we had to adapt to the strategy of proactive learning to this pandemic and to this digital transformation, I will mainly talk about our experience and what we have done in terms of designing the course. So for us, we thought that it's very important to emphasize on the practical sides of activities with students. And this is what keeps them engaged, by the way, in any course, you know, instead of just being in front of a screen on mute with no cam all the time or for a long period of time. So we looked at the realistic and practical tasks and problem situations, and not just the theoretical ones, because we thought it's very important for the development of their career. So Veritech, hand in hand with St. Joseph University of Beirut, didn't want to stop this proactive learning culture at all, because even if we went online and it was all of a sudden, because we believe that it's an investment in our graduates and it's paramount to the success of the organizations. So that's why we have adopted a student-centered strategy in our design thinking and innovation course. And we developed it in the most favorable conditions and approaches to learning for students in order to encourage their proactivity, which is important for further professional development. And the course was also designed around promoting the independent and active role of students and the development of critical thinking, where students were developing a form of proactive and self-regulated learning, which includes critical thinking, problem solving, deep analysis of the problem, self-initiative in finding solution, and thinking about different aspects of problem solving situations. So that's where the verticals or parameters that we have built our course on, along with the Ursula, of course, in order to keep those students engaged and help them develop throughout this phase.
Thank you very much for that. I chose it because it does fit quite nicely into another question I had written down there, which I think I'll pass to you, Ursula, straight away, which is, are there any assumptions on student behaviors that are now no longer accurate? We talked a little bit about assumptions on students' ability to use digital learning technologies, but is there anything that sort of you're surprised to find is not actually the case anymore?
Yeah, definitely. Well, companies out there in the market need real team players and innovators. This old mentality of A students versus the rest of the class, and the biggest mistake that keeps a student from getting smarter is thinking that being smart is a fixed status rather than a dynamic process. So for companies, no matter how students are smart, if they are in the habit of critical proactive learning, then they will keep on getting smarter. And that's what makes proactive learning the ultimate transferable skill. So what we found out from this interaction and the collaborative work between companies and students is that it's not only about the hot technical skills. They may become obsolete. It's mainly about those soft skills, the importance of students being coachable, being adaptable to a fast changing world. So that's why we tell students, employers out there don't really care about your grades. They care also about your character, your personality traits. So do profit from such kind of courses in order to develop. You just don't need, I'm not telling them not to study and not to take grades, so that okay, but it's also about their character, their personality, their skills that they can develop even in their undergraduate years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I would add to that I mean, personally, I don't like the term best and brightest student because that gives an implication that there's a worst and dullest student. And that is not always the best positioning. When students are going to university or any form of education, they are looking for an outcome, and the grades, if they're passing, are not necessarily the best indication of their ability to work. There are other things there, but that's just my personal view on that. Ursula, for you, are there any assumptions that are no longer accurate?
Definitely, I will just add a couple to Carla's. So the first one is how the student relate to the professor. So with this increased flexibility, professors became a support for students and not necessarily related to things directly to their course. So this interaction, the behavior of seeing the professor, this limitation between professor and students have changed with the online. There are more personal interaction among them. The second one is among students. There was a lot of competition among students for grades. We see a lot more collaboration now. So students are giving support to each other on a personal side, on study sides. And the third, also Carla mentioned it, the skills versus the grades. So it's not anymore about excelling in the grades in a digital environment. It's also reinforcing social intelligence and sense making. These are two important skills we've seen and change of behavior of our students.
Thank you very much. Chris, are there any assumptions that are now going out the window from the previous year?
Yeah, you know, I think the thing that we have to acknowledge is that we're dealing with a heterogeneous community here, and it's, impossible to, homogenize your student audience. We assumed, for example, early on that what students really wanted was to consume a face-to-face learning experience, and so really bent over backwards to try and provide that safely. And then, of course, we had the students turning around and saying, well, actually, you know what? We'd really like to have this online because I don't want to get onto a crowded bus in the morning and have all those guys breathing over me. I'd much rather stay at home. I'd much rather go to my home country and consume your product, and in which case you've got to accommodate them. I mean, we worked with Ali Cloud in China in order to provide a sustainable access provision for all of our Chinese students, and we continue to do that in other countries. We've got a whole bunch of students who are now in Myanmar, whose internet is switched off for 12 hours a day. We've got to try and find a way to accommodate them, and that's what putting the student first is all about.
Absolutely. You're completely correct in your comments that we have a tendency to treat students as a homogenous group, and they are very heterogeneous. And the way in which they use and the reasons for them doing so. I guess quite often we think of students as young people, but at QS we do a lot of MBA students who are in their early 30s and beyond, and well into their career, and may have families, and as a consequence that affects their ability to do a 9-to-5 class. Ezra, I'll close out the question with you, which is, what are the assumptions on student behaviors that are now no longer accurate?
I would say now the students are more committed, so their behavior has changed from relying on the faculty to provide them all the relevant information and the materials is no longer there. The students are becoming more self-motivated, independent, and committed, as well as they are more towards learning independently. So I think the way that it used to be is no longer the case, and they are now very flexible in the way that they are learning, in a way that they would choose the time that they would like to go through their materials. They are self-motivated to learn by themselves. I think this behavior is something that we really did not have previously, and also the interaction increased with the faculty. So those type of students that they used to be very shy to interact in the classroom, now they are interacting with their faculty by typing in the chat, by sending them WhatsApp messages, direct emails. So this interaction has increased and really built up a very strong relationship between the students and the faculty.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Ezra. I want to go over to the audience questions that we're receiving because we're just near the final 15 minutes and I've teased it enough. Chris Baldwin asks the question, we all agree that the experience for students was very different and lots of support went to this area, but the experience for our colleagues was also very different. How did you support your staff during this time? And I'll go to you first, Chris, to answer the other Chris's question.
Yeah, I'd like to take two approaches to this. I think one of them is technical support, because the difference between an experienced online content curator and somebody like myself who was completely new to it is, there's a world of difference there. And, we went from having one online learning support advisor to needing like 24. So what we rapidly did was, we kind of set up a community of practice and redesignated quite a number of staff in order to provide the kind of e-admin support that people need if they're going to get their content online quickly and effectively. And that was pretty successful, I would say, within a month of starting. But the other one is the much more challenging aspect of pastoral support. And of course, Singapore has got a large international and often itinerant academic workforce. And we were aware early on that there were a lot of people who are here on their own, they're remote from their families, And we know the kind of stresses that lockdown, isolation, circuit breakers, and all of that has placed on people. And so we were very flexible about enabling people to get back to their home countries, about running online social events, just checking in with people very regularly to see how they were doing. And, you know, we're still learning how to deal with these situations. And I think flexibility is everything, because just like our students, everybody's different.
Thank you very much. Ursula, how has your institution been supporting staff during this period?
I can think of various strategies that the university have adopted. One of them that was very important was the participation. Letting professors feel and staff part of the decision in these tough days. So we cannot make a perfect decision, but a participative decision might be the most adequate to satisfy these differences and diversity group of people. The participation in small teams and also in big decisions. The second was the communication. We needed continuous communication with them, letting know what's happening, where are we going, what is the strategy, what are the actions we're going to take, what are the results we got, even the survey, they need to know what's happening. The third was the human support and empathy, and this is very important. There are many projects we've done to give emotional support, to help them go through the stress, the depression, working at home, having the kids around. So there were many conferences and gathering around these topics. Teaching them, there was a lot of online training for professors and administrative staff on how to use technology, how to manage their time. So a lot of training and many videos are available online. The support, the direct support, and having close support to them. So having people all around the different faculties that would support whenever they need immediate support with their course or any other things, hotline. And finally, trying to institutionalize some stuff, you know, having some rules that they can hold on, knowing that that's how things are going to happen now. So they are eliminating surprises and guessing. So I guess these are a few of the strategies I can mention.
Eliminating and surprises and guessing. That's a really good point to make up. That's because I think that's relevant to students as well. And in fact, anyone not just working in education, but just working in general, eliminating those. Carla, for Berry Tech, what sort of support was offered to staff during this period of time?
Yes, regarding the staff, there was definitely a technical and admin support. That's one, and that was raised also with by Chris. The second one is flexibility. We had to be more flexible with our employees to work, you know, at their convenience, you know, whenever they find quality time to work, because, you know, we have also working moms who are just beside their students also, their children, sorry, and who are learning online. So we had to be more flexible, and we also ask them to take leaves if they want to just rest and take a deep breath, because we're not only living the pandemic, we are also living a financial and economic crisis here in Lebanon, and it's getting too off on us. The technical and admin support was also given to our startups, because as I said in the beginning, we had to move the programs online, all of our programs online, whether it's incubation, acceleration. And finally, we had to do a happy hour for our staff one time, where we had one of our Berry Tech family member who was our DJ, and we really had a good time. It was okay, we were in front of our screens, but we had to, you know, have a drink and some music and some fun, all of us virtually, but that was fine. And we think we will do it like from time to another. Thank you.
That's great. I can share that QS has also been doing virtual pub quizzes quite often on a Friday night, often Saturday mornings for me very early. But Dr. Ezra, do you have anything further to add around the staff support that was offered?
Actually, just maybe one or two. We did some sort of knowledge sharing sessions that they were regular and systematically conducted. These knowledge sharing sessions, they were trying to bring all the faculty together and share their practices. That helps each other, everyone to share their knowledge and the practice, whether it is in terms of academic or non-academic side. Of course, the organization, the university provided a lot of support for all the staff in terms of flexibility of working hours and also setting time frames for certain projects by considering equal opportunities for both males and females. So there was priorities were given, of course, for the women. However, there was always a flexibility for both staff members. And we did a lot of events that it was really to help and to maintain the social part. So we had a lot of events that is like yoga classes and things like that, just to try to help the staff to get some sort of relief and to avoid the anxiety and the pressure. So yes, I cannot agree more on everyone's from the panel. Their experience was absolutely amazing. And one of them, we had set a lot of rules, policies, and procedures that just made it very clear to everyone to adhere to and to keep the operation smoothly running. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ezra. We are fast approaching the end, and I want to get to a question that was sent through from an anonymous attendee, but also there's another one that pairs in quite well with it, which is that the question is, I wonder if the panel see that COVID has widened the gap between those who have and those who don't have or have not. Do they see those from lower income background losing out as a result of the virtual digital shift? I think this is important considering we are talking about proactive learning. At the same time, we have a similar question from Dr. Adnan Awatha from Saudi Arabia, Shakra University, who asked about the cultural structure of societies among countries and the world affects the protection and development of education. How can this be overcome? So it's a little bit of a very complicated question I'm asking in a very short period of time. Chris, I saw you laughing at me saying that, so I'm going to ask you that question first. Are there concerns around the haves and have-nots around proactive learning? And also, how do you overcome any cultural and societal barriers that are occurring during this period?
I think that's a really interesting space, Anton, and it's a shame that we've only got kind of 5 minutes left. I think on the one hand, it's absolutely spot on that, of course, it does open up a divide, because if the government switches your internet off at midday every day, then we've got a problem. On the other hand, I think there's another dynamic in play, and that is something around the democratization of education, because we've been talking pretty much at what's happening at an institutional level, but I think the other really interesting question is what's happening at an industry level, where you've got almost a move to like a Netflix style model of consumption. For I think Coursera for several years now has been running a subscription based access to their content, and what about if you applied that at a degree level, where you could get your marine science from JCU, you could get your statistics from UNSW, and you can go shopping when you can afford it. I think that there are structural changes in play in the industry now, which COVID has probably accelerated, but probably the genie's out of the bottle now. I think the whole structure of the industry is going to change, and market forces are only going to drive prices one way, I think, and that's downwards.
That's a really good point, and you're absolutely right. It's a shame we don't have too much more time to discuss this, because if we did, I would ask about government accreditation around these short courses, which often appears to be a barrier. I'm either here nor I have no particular opinion on that at this point in time. I need to do a bit more research. But for you, Dr. Ezra, the digital divide, haves and have-nots, and cultural barriers, some final remarks on that?
Actually, I think it's amazing how we take this, and we can take it in a positive and in a negative way at the same time. And I think it is a positive way because we can always attract people from different regions, different universities around the world to somehow deliver to them a similar teaching and learning experience. So it's a sword with two edges. Thank you.
Short and sweet, perfect. Ursula, any comments around the digital divide and also cultural and societal barriers within online education for proactive learning?
Definitely, it's going to be, there are many differences. We can see in a normal class, everyone is there, they are alike, they share the same space, the same resources. In the online classroom, the professor and students do not have equal knowledge and access to technology. So some have maybe fiber optics, and others live in a small space with a big family with a limited access to internet, maybe just their cell phone. Some are studying engineering with advanced knowledge in technology, and others are studying literature, history, might think that they might never actually need technology. So here we have a big role to work on computational thinking and try to reinforce this digital learning. We need to work on cross-cultural communication, but mostly we need to transform our instructional design to think of all types of users and how can it be adapted in a asynchronous way, and for students to be proactive, to make their decision, and to be able to decide how to learn and have equal opportunities. The second thing that is very important is listening and empathizing. We really need to understand our classroom. So every course is going to be different with a different mix of students. So we don't need to adapt everything to everyone. We need to have options of adaptation and understand our specific course and what are their needs and make specific adaptation for them.
Thank you very much for that, Ursula. We have a little bit more time. Carla, I believe you have some comments around Chris's point as well.
Yes, regarding being flexible about working schedule, etc., even after the pandemic. Because we mentioned before that we were so flexible with our employees while they are working from home, because they know they are, managing their work and supervising their kids and taking care of themselves and their families. So yes, I believe the employees, the working schedules, working from home thing, this flexibility, I believe this will continue in the next era, because we have noticed that some businesses or some tasks can be done from home. So we can't really need to go and access the office to do that. But that won't be like every day or on the long run. But I'm sure that companies would move, like universities, they cannot stick to a rigid system. Companies also would not stick to any rigid system in treating their employees and in having flexible working hours. So I believe this will become the trend from now on.
Thank you very much for that. And I should clarify, the question came through from the audience around whether or not flexibility was going to continue after the pandemic. Now, we're almost out of time. We still have a lot more questions, but I do have to leave it very quickly. So I'm going to challenge our panelists to summarize in one sentence, what are your predictions for the next 5 years? Carla, I'll start with you because you're the last person to speak. One sentence, next 5 years predictions, go.
You made it very difficult for me to to summarize it in one, I've noted a lot of I've mentioned a lot of notes, but I mean, I will try to summarize it as short as I can. If I am to reimagine education in the next few years, I would say that there will be a distinction between institutions that are flexible and institutions who are stuck in this crisis. So the education systems shouldn't be threatened by their way of thinking. They should be open. They should learn from the world's education leaders. Okay, this COVID-19 crisis struck at a point where most education systems were not ready for the world of digital learning opportunities, but I believe there's a pressuring need for the education community to come together and ensure that quality education for all continues to be met. The state of technology in our schools should mirror a better state of mind in our school system. We can't just keep creating tools on the go. So the challenge here is to build on the expertise of our professors and school leaders, and to just challenge the institutional practices and revamp them. So that's how we can at least guarantee having a proactive learning culture in place. Well, I have a lot more to say, but I will stop here.
Thank you very much for that. Ursula, for you, your final observations, predictions for the next 5 years, very, very quickly.
Well, very quickly, I would say flexible paths. So every person would have his own path and would be designing it, maybe 4 years, 6 years, or maybe longer. The second, more purpose in the learning. So we are more conscious about the need of the society for the people. So the journey is going to be more related to the mission of the person. And the third, increased collaboration. So having the word in the classroom out in the world, mixing industry, students on campus and out campus. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, your very brief predictions for the next 5 years.
Massive growth in EdTech, in AI, in cyber, more partnership, enhanced role for the tech companies, more in-country delivery, more T&E projects, more learning pods or pop-up campuses, and market opportunities for small organizations who are fast and nimble.
Perfect. And finally, we started with you, Dr. Ezra, so I'll end with you. What are your predictions, very brief predictions, for the next 5 years?
Thank you. I will take it from a different angle, the recognition of, or the accreditors or the regulators will start to recognize online learning or maybe blended learning, and by focusing on the quality of education and also for promoting lifelong learning in a way for sustainable education. Also, maybe more collaboration that will allow diversity and international delivery through online learning and cross-border education, focused on transformation, AI, as Chris said, and more of IT programs and IT-related fields.
Thank you very much. And this is all we have time for. Unfortunately, we have to end. So Dr. Ezra, Ursula, Professor Chris, and Carla, thank you very much for joining me. Also, thank you very much to the audience for joining us as well for the very first QS in Conversation for the year. We will be back in a slightly different format. We won't be doing this monthly this year. We'll be doing it quarterly to focus our content a little bit more. But we will still be doing our podcast. The next one is out. It's set to come out very shortly. And of course, later this month, we have the Maple Conference. Again, that's the Future Today Sustainable Growth Towards 2030, and that will be held from the 23rd to the 25th of March. Go to qsmaple.org or .com, I'm not quite sure, but we'll have those details for you. The other thing I mentioned as well is the subject ranking came out earlier yesterday or earlier this week. You can get a copy of the results in a condensed format from qs.com and download that higher education report, or alternatively explore all of the results at topuniversities.com as well. On behalf of the team here at Singapore, thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.